Hello and welcome to Thrive at Home. My name is Sam.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
And today we're going to just discuss a topic that we get asked a lot, kind of in session, which is...
Or told a lot.
Yeah.
We get told.
Which basically is, I've tried everything, and they won't listen.
I've tried that. That doesn't work.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things that immediately I have two kind of responses. I mean, one is empathy, right? I'm like, oh man, that's got to be really tough. And then the other part is, I'd really like to see what that looks like,
Right.
What does it look like that you've tried everything, and have you really tried everything? Because that's probably one of the hardest things we encounter is when we maybe are giving someone good tools, but maybe they're not actually implementing those tools the way the tools are prescribed to be used,
Right. Well, it's when you're under pressure, you're having a conversation and you're in the moment, right? You can believe, later, or in the moment, you can believe that you're doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, if you play it back in your head, you can justify your behaviors and still believe that you're doing it right.
Right.
But I've often told people, I would love to be a fly on your wall.
Yes.
But as a therapist, to be able to look at exactly what happened and the detailed play-by-play, then I'm almost certain that there was something else going on.
Right.
How things were said, a word that was used that caused an inflammatory moment and caused it to backfire. But there's almost something that a third party would be able to see that you're not seeing. And so getting that, I've tried everything. Yeah, it's true. I'm
Yeah, and it's no doubt that people have tried, okay? I think in their intention, in their heart, they've tried. But one of the things we would say is that we, as therapists, you've got to try it, and then you've got to have the discipline to do it the way that it is being said.
That's
okay?
right.
So instead of doing it your old way, because that hasn't been working, you got to do it a new way. So one thing I thought when I kind of did sometimes we do no-fault autopsies, or at least I try to, with couples, and it's like, let's take a review of this. Like, give me kind of what happened. And one thing I find is somebody has said, at the beginning of the conversation, maybe they've thrown out the word divorce. And I will just say that sometimes people are so angry, or you're so upset that you just say things. And sometimes we describe it as a line, that you cross this line of the I don't care what I say line anymore, because you're just so upset. Nothing is resolving, so you cross this line and you just throw this thing out. Maybe we should get divorced. Well, for you're not actually thinking signing papers and ending the relationship. You're just saying it to get a reaction because you don't feel like your partner is listening.
They're not hearing.
Or maybe they've shut you out. But what happens for the other person when they hear that, it's like, for some people, they go into abject panic. It's like, oh my goodness, what? There's no way. And so what we don't realize is that anything we say after we say that, the other person has this, they're in complete...
Right. They have this wall that just kind of goes up, or shock that happens, or...
What are we talking about here? I thought we were talking about, what TV show, and now we're... So it's such a shock. So that's one thing that I would say, or has that been thrown around recently, and so people are avoiding the conflict. They're avoiding getting into it because they're afraid it's going to go to a place, right, that's going to be unresolvable. I think sometimes that happens, that people then desperately begin to try to avoid conversations. So if you're trying everything and it's not working, I would want to look, hey, what have we poisoned the possibility of it working by something we said?
Right. I think, too, we get, in relationships, especially when we get comfortable and we learn each other's patterns and buttons to push, we get into this conversational dance that can end up becoming just like headlocked or just stuck. And even if it's not the first time you've thrown around something like divorce or I'm just going to leave, maybe both of you are throwing that around, and basically your conversation has this dance that then gets to a stuck place.
Right.
And
gridlocked.
Yeah, exactly. And having the discipline whenever as therapists, we will give a tool or say, hey, try a conversation this way. And it feels so unnatural, and it just feels, ugh. And then typically what happens when they'll come back in the office, well, we tried that. Well, tell me what happened. And they didn't try the exercise at all.
Right.
Because then they started out that way, but then they got back into their conversational dance.
Yeah.
That ended them right back in the same place.
Right.
And it's really challenging to change that conversation. And it does feel weird. It doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah.
Either, especially when you've been doing it one way for so long, and that's the comfortable old shoe or the comfortable old, I have a robe that I wear all the time. It's my comfortable robe. It's just, that's kind of what our conversation patterns can become.
Yeah. You get stuck. They call it a script, right? You know, it's like, I know my lines, you know your lines, and we start doing this dance. And that's tough to break out of sometimes. Another thing I was thinking of was, when people are throwing out the word divorce because they're so desperate, like something's got to shift. I think that's what you need to key on. Something needs to shift. Like, this isn't okay.
Right.
But we got to learn to say that in a way that doesn't poison the possibility of a resolution.
Right.
And the other thing we were talking about earlier was that often when you get into that gridlock state, there's something underneath that if you can take some time and go from, in a sense, gridlock to dialogue, where you can begin to explore, why is this? What are you thinking about this issue that is so meaningful? And can I discover more about it? Because sometimes we lose the ability to listen and understand at that point because we're so focused on persuading.
Right.
Like, I need you to come around to my side, and that's the only thing I can think about, rather than, hey, I need to figure out where you're coming from.
Right.
And I think when we do that, when all of our communication is about persuading, we're basically telling the other person that we're right and the other one's wrong.
Right.
That's the underlying message. So even though you may be using I statements and all kinds of perfect tools, but if your underlying goal is to persuade and to convince the other person, typically what you're saying is, I'm right and you're wrong, and that's criticism. And when we get that criticism, then there's the wall.
Right.
So
that
could be a problem. So if you feel like you have tried everything, just know that maybe, talk to someone, go maybe have a little discussion, maybe talk to your partner, like, is there anything I'm doing that's, creating this shutdown? Because what's surprising, and you may have experienced this, but you've tried, and then someone else will say something to them and they seem super open to it. So I don't necessarily believe that a person who is labeled as a shutdown case is shut down to everybody. It's just they may be shut down to a certain person. And that's very painful, especially when that person is your wife or your husband. So anyway, you want to open up, you want to have good conversation, but we would just say try again. Okay, it is never too late to try.
Right.
Try something new. Try the same thing at a different speed. Do something different.
Right. And each relationship is individual and unique. And so if this reaches you and say, oh yeah, I think we're doing this, email us.
Yeah.
Let us know a little bit, and we would love to email you back. We've got lots of tips, more than we can put in this little video, but we have lots of things that we can share with you, even over an email, that potentially would give you another idea of how you could come about the relationship differently. Yeah. So please reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. And, I was thinking that we've tried that. Like, there's been things that you and I have tried, and it didn't work. And it's so easy to just file that away and go, well, that was an exercise, didn't try, or didn't work. And it might have been, it just didn't work at that time.
That's right. And
so, bringing some of those things back out of the shelf and saying, hey, we need to try this again. I'd like to try this again. So anyway, even for us, there's probably things that we could do again.
Try again.
All right, take care.